Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.
Yeah, and after a relatively quiet transfer window for Republic of Ireland internationals, thus far things have ramped up significantly in the past 24 hours, with in fact our most expensive ever footballer about to be crowned. Nathan Collins is heading for Wolves from Burnley for the princely sum of €24 million in euro or British pounds, £20.4 million. Quite the move for the 21-year-old who's come to prominence, of course, over the last 6 months for the Republic of Ireland, and indeed for his soon-to-be former club Burnley. To join us to look through what could be a fairly busy week for Irish internationals is Gavin Cooney from the 42.ie. Gavin, you're welcome.
Thanks very much.
First of all, I think this almost got lost when you see the figures being sloshed around. The fact that Nathan Collins could be our most expensive ever footballer, there's probably a book in this about how Irish internationals have been thus far undervalued in the transfer market.
Yeah, and look, I would argue maybe I'm still in too much of a bubble from just watching Ireland games too often and, you know, preaching to the world. You don't rate these guys enough. Might still be the case. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Josh Cullen later on. He's linked with a €3 million move to Burnley.
Pittance.
Nothing for a guy, you know, who's played every minute of the Irish internationals for which he's been available for, largely give or take a half an hour here or there. Robbie Keane, I think, was it Robbie Keane to Liverpool?
Robbie Keane to Liverpool. To go through the list, right?
Expensive, yeah.
Keane to Liverpool from Spurs, obviously, £90 million. That was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's 14 years since we've last had the upper echelons broken in terms of most expensive players. Then after that, 17 million for Damien Duff, going between Blackburn and Chelsea in the mid-2000s. Matt Doherty, of course, plonked himself right into the middle of the list with his £15 million move from Wolves to Spurs a couple of years ago. James McCarthy still hanging around in there. 13.5 million from Wigan to Everton. Then you have the likes of Robbie Brady, another move for Robbie Keane from Coventry to Inter. Shane Long's in there for 12 million. But Nick Collins, should this go through, will be only the 8th Irish player ever to command a fee north of £10 million. And when you see the money that has been sloshing around in the transfer market, particularly in the last decade, that seems incredible.
Yeah, and you know, it's been the Robbie Keane move to Liverpool was 2009. Like, the inflation and transfer fee since then has been remarkable. So for it to take this long for that fee to be eclipsed speaks to partly the undervaluing of Irish players, and let's be honest, the fact that, you know, that generation did not produce as much talent as Keane and Duff before them. And Robbie is still well out in front, I'd imagine, in terms of accumulated transfer fees.
3 of the top 10 moves are his.
I wouldn't rule out Collins knocking him off the top before his career is over. Like, he's only 21.
He's only 21 and he's already had a £12 million move, I think, from Burnley last year. So he's definitely knocking around in there in that Robbie Keane back to Tottenham move, up above Jeff Hendrick's move to Burnley in 2016. So, like, we're already talking about a £30 million cumulative transfer. If he does well for Burnley in the next 2 years, that's going to be another 40-50 million, you would imagine, with the way money's going.
Might just be. And look, it's good. And I think in these respects, a rising tide will often lift all boats. I mean, once you get Irish players commanding big fees, Bazunu somewhat, and then obviously with Collins, you know, you might get an extra few million tagged onto other Irish players who are playing alongside these guys in the same team, although seemingly too soon for Josh Cullen. Very interesting move for Nathan Collins, I have to say. Wolves, on the face of it, is not the most glamorous. Like, you look at him score that goal against Ukraine and you think this guy could play anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's a good move. It's a good move in the immediate term, but it's also an interesting move for, you know, the move before what comes next. Because look, Collins is, I don't think I'm over exaggerating when I say he's Champions League quality, or he can be Champions League quality. And look, if from an Irish point of view, it's not the worst thing in the world that there's another step now before he potentially makes that step, because if he goes to a Champions League side now, he might struggle to get in the team instantly. And from an Ireland point of view, the best case scenario is all of their players playing regularly at a high level, and this is what the Wolves move guarantees. They've sold Roman Saiss has left. He was a dependable member of that back three, so you'd imagine he'll come straight in. Imagine he won't come into the middle of it, because that's where Conor Cody plays, and he plays there to compensate for his relative lack of pace, which is not a problem Collins has. We've seen him excel to the right of the Irish back three so far. So all things considered, it looks like a pretty good move for a guy who's got his head screwed on and is very mature for 21.
We kind of have to check our expectations of him a little bit as well, because obviously he did have the big money move from Stoke to Burnley, comparatively speaking, just last year. But he only broke through into the Burnley first team towards the end of last season. That was a combination of suspensions, injuries, and a little bit of his own form pushing through. Scored a couple of goals that could have proved vital if they had stayed up. But
Dyche was particularly loath to break up the me and Tarkovsky combination. You know, where Dyche could avoid making changes, that's exactly what he would do. So I don't know how much of that is a comment on Collins. But every time I've seen him, every opportunity he's been given, he's excelled. And it took him 2-3 games in the Irish team to emerge as a leader of the team and one of the best players in the team. So I wouldn't have any concerns about him going straight into the Wolves team and playing, injuries and suspensions permitting, every minute of next season.
Yeah, John Percy's report in the Telegraph yesterday, when this move kind of first reared its head, the suggestion was that he as you mentioned there, fits Wolves perfectly because he can play on that side of Connor Cody. He can also operate obviously as one of two centre halves. He's going to play alongside Cody in a four at the back. He's ready made. So when we're talking about, there was talk that Manchester United might have been interested, no bid was forthcoming. Wolves have obviously gotten ahead of the queue now, and the more you think about it, it's one of those rare transfers where you're not scratching your head going, well, how's that going to work, and is he really going to be able to break? It absolutely works. Yeah. Almost too perfectly. I'm kind of worried as to how perfect this looks on the surface. It also
reminds me of the Bazunu to Southampton move. I think that's a perfect match as well, because Southampton have struggled for goalkeepers in the last couple of years. Alex McCarthy was generally first choice, and then he got bombed out toward the end of the season. You were playing Fraser Foster, and they were never fully convincing. And the Southampton goalkeeper, especially under Hasenhüttl, is very, very busy. Yeah. I can't imagine Bazunu having to stoop into his own net to pick out the ball 9 times in a single game, as seems to be
we'll see,
as was the case for previous Southampton goalkeepers. So the moves, they just they make sense in a way that the Robbie Keane to Liverpool one never did. So
even looking at the €7 million or £7 million bath that Liverpool took on that inside 6 months, that was just absolutely crazy, and probably spoke volumes to how little that worked. Others have obviously worked. Matt Doherty has settled into Spurs and the system under Conte, particularly under the last 6 months, and there have been others that did work, at least in the short term. You look at the impact that Shane Long made over the long term at Southampton, that worked certainly. Maybe less so the likes of James McCarthy going to Everton, but generally speaking, it really is a head scratcher, and it does speak to the fact that no Ireland player necessarily has broken through to such a degree that there are a host of top level clubs clamouring for their signature and willing to pay fees in excess of £20 million on the regular, because that just hasn't happened. But
I think I don't know how much of a cultural thing it is, because Ireland has always been easy pickings for English football and UK football.
They tend to go young, and then they stay where they are more often than not.
I mean, oftentimes, and we're seeing it happen in a European context now, where obviously 16 to 18-year-olds aren't going to the UK, but they are going to Europe and there are buyout clauses in the contracts for very, very little. Historically, that was just England's and the UK's patch. I mean, no one else really shopped in Ireland that often, and they were always getting talent so cheap, way too cheap, partly through, it's not always the fault of the clubs. I mean, the players and their agents sign contracts and it's negotiated, etc., etc. So I wonder, does that partly feed into the idea why there wasn't that extra premium on transfer fees paid for Irish players in the middle of their professional career, in their adulthood? Maybe that was part of it, but that's obviously changing now, and it's interesting to see what kind of impact or knock-on impact the Collins fee might have down the line. Now, look, obviously the fee is high because he's so good, and there aren't many Irish players on the market this year who are as good as him and are as young as him. But it'll be interesting to see, because I can't believe that it's only until today that Robbie Keane to Liverpool has been knocked off that list. 13 years on.
There've been slight kind of dalliances with that fee, but as regards whether the transfers, but certainly this will be the first time since 2008, 14 years that transfer fee will be broken, which is just absolutely incredible. Burnley are obviously going to reinvest some of that money from which they're making.
Well, not much of it by the sounds of
it. This is what struck me, and plays into that fact that Irish players are somewhat undervalued. Josh Cullen has obviously flourished under Vincent Kompany at Anderlecht. A brilliant move, an outside the box move, one that we're seeing a lot of players, I guess, replicate, one of which we'll possibly get to in a moment. But Cullen has done great things at Anderlecht. Obviously we're not going to be able to see every Anderlecht game, so we can't speak volumes to how well he's done or not, but the reports seem to be that he has been a very dependable player. You look at the stats that he's amounted for Anderlecht, he's been a near ever present for the last couple of years.
But look at the player he's become for Ireland.
Exactly, he's become so pivotal in that pivot position in midfield for Ireland. And you see the figures being bandied about. I'm like, it wasn't just from an English perspective, I was going through the Belgian media and getting the old Google Translate out. It is literally only 3.5 million that Cullen could be going to Burnley for, which seems a steal.
Yeah, it does. It seems like one of the bargains it will be one of the bargains of the transfer window from my point of view anyway. Again, look, are we sometimes a little bit too biased towards
we definitely
Irish
are.
players?
Yeah.
But even allowing for my obvious bias in this, I actually think it's so cheap, and it's a great signing for Burnley. Like, I mean, Burnley are in relative financial straits because of the structure of their takeover deal, and the fact that it alone worth €65 million has to be paid much sooner than anticipated because of relegation. So this is a great. They're getting like a regular international midfielder for €3 million to play in the Championship. Like, it's a great deal. And then you add in the fact that he's worked with Vincent Kompany, the manager, before.
Yeah.
His availability is outstanding. He's always fit. He goes the distance in every game. Like, he played 4,500 minutes or something, absolutely off the charts last season. And Stephen Kenny talked about him starting 60 games. I think maybe it was slightly less. I think it might have been 56 or 57. But I mean, either way, like, he played a hell of a lot of football and improved a lot. So for £3 million, I have to say that's a great signing. From an Irish point of view, obviously the Cullen at Anderlecht was working for Ireland. Now, maybe it only worked under Vincent Kompany, so maybe this is the right move. I don't know. The Championship has evolved to such an extent. Like, there are so many foreign coaches in it now. It's a far more technical league. It's a far richer league than the Belgian top flight or anywhere else. So maybe the move will suit Josh Cullen, and I think it would suit him for as long as Vincent Kompany is in charge there. The only worry you'd have is the uncertainty around Burnley. Like, how will Kompany do? It's a new team. The financial situation doesn't sound particularly great. How will they adapt to the Championship? That kind of thing. So in the short term, it looks like a good move if it goes ahead.
He's used to playing there as well. Like, he has put in shifts for like the Charlton while on loan and stuff. So it's not necessarily alien to him, but it will be taxing in a way that the last 2 years at Anderlecht haven't been.
No, and look, he'll be fine. He's played at a high level for Ireland, at international level. The international level might not be Champions League level, but it is better than Championship level.
True, yeah. And Football and Off the Ball brought to you with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. As we've been speaking, Gav, the move to Wolves for Nathan Collins, 100% confirmed and locked in. So there's timing of a conversation for you. It is done and dusted. Nathan Collins is Ireland's most expensive ever player. You would hope, looking through that squad, there is an opportunity for others to perhaps follow in that wake. You're looking at Bazunu, obviously, possibly if things go well, we'll probably get another move from Southampton. Like Andrew Omobamidele would look ready-made for a similar kind of move down the line. But there are others on the move at the moment this week. Jeff Hendrick is taking another move, a long move away from Newcastle. He's gone to Reading. He's gotten used to playing in blue and white hoops last season. Perhaps not successfully for QPR, but he'll be hoping to put down some roots in Reading, at least for this year alone. He needs minutes. Like, that's the thing with Jeff.
And isn't rated by Eddie Howe at all, for whatever reason. Was not really given a chance under Howe at Newcastle at all. He signed a new I think he's got 2 years left on his contract at Newcastle, and it sounds like a pretty good contract that he signed when Steve Bruce was the manager, and Bruce did rate him and did play him relatively regularly until got an injury and then was out of the team.
But if you're comparing him to, like, it's where Newcastle want to be and where they have been. I think Jeff Hendrick's probably a marker of that for them. Like, if they're able to go out and sign a Bruno Guimaraes in January, who seems far and away a better player than what Jeff Hendrick is, with the greatest respects to Hendrick, you can kind of see why he wouldn't necessarily, on the money he's on, fit around that dressing room, and probably better off seeking another club for him for the time being, at least.
And look, we spoke to Hendrick in Armenia at the start of the summer, and technically at the end of last season, and he was openly saying that, look, it's quite possible that I've played my last game for Newcastle United. So he's on pretty good wage, I think, so I'm not surprised not that he's taking a loan move. Reading isn't exactly the most rarefied air in the Championship based on performances last season, but he needs regular minutes if he's going to stay in the Ireland team, because up until this window in June, you'd have thought Jeff Hendrick's a lock for the midfield, but you know, Kenny made that change midway through, went to the Cullen with Knight and Malumbi for the Scotland and Ukraine games, and it brought a marked improvement in performance. And then if Hendrick's not playing regularly at club level, it's hard to make a case to include him in Ireland's first team, so he has to go and play regularly. The QPR move didn't really work out. It was complicated by
the managerial situation and the hamstring injury.
Yeah, the managerial situation wasn't ideal either, but there was a hamstring injury, and then he came back. I think he played the penultimate game of the season, and then didn't play the final game because of the birth of his son. So he just looking for regular football. It's not a startling move by any respect, but the Championship is interesting for a couple of respects next season for Ireland, because you've got a few of the old guard, really, is what they are now, trying to prove themselves worthy of getting back in the Ireland squad or getting back in the Ireland team, which is only 6 years on from Euro 2016. You're looking at Hendrick at Reading, you're looking at Robbie Brady at Preston, only on a 1-year deal, thinking, this is they have to take these opportunities now to keep in the Ireland team, because time is marching on and there's quality coming through, going for pretty significant money. And just one other player to look out for there is Carla Morada, who's obviously moved around in the Championship, and he has been out of the picture at international level thanks largely to injury, to be honest. He's always been rated by Kenny. So that's one angle that makes the Championship particularly interesting next season. Yeah, and even Jamie McGrath at Wigan, he kind of needs to make that breakthrough. That hasn't really, like, everybody presumed that move down from Scotland would just, he's going into Wigan, it's going to be fine, he'll motor through their midfield, and hasn't happened. Hasn't happened at all.
Has seen his international prospects really suffer because of that. Has
paid a very heavy price very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised at how quickly that happened. I mean, he moved from St Mirren to Wigan in January. Wigan at the top of League One, couldn't get in the team. There were times when he couldn't get in the matchday squad. And Stephen Kenny was very, very open and honest about it. That, we can't, even for the March friendlies, we can't, bring Jamie in here and risk him not playing again until we reassemble in June, or else I can bring someone in like a Conor Ronan, like a Mark Sykes, and take a look at them. So I'm actually surprised at how quickly that went. But there's, for the first time in years, Richie, there's proper competition for places in the Ireland team. And as a result, players know that they have to be playing regular football. One
person who's probably suffered a little bit from the competition for places up front, at least anyways, has been Aaron Connolly. He's kind of drifted from being the next hope. I remember being in Geneva and there was that clamour for Connolly to start in Mick McCarthy's dying days, and getting him in there, getting him blooded and getting him international experience. And it seems to have died off pretty significantly since then. He didn't pull up any trees necessarily on that loan move to Middlesbrough last year. And then this story today pops up that he's considering a move to Venezia. Now, the route to Italy is pretty well trodden this summer. When you look at James Abankwah and Festi Ebiseli going to Udinese, we've got Kerrigan going off to Como, and now we seemingly have in the most stylish jersey there is in Serie B, Aaron Connolly potentially. Yeah. Well, look, this is all good news for my ambitions to become the 42's Italian football correspondent. You could be the next Paddy Agnew. Yeah, yeah. I can cover the church as well. That's right. I mean, the football in church is right up my alley. Popes and Players. The next book from Gavin Cooney. Yeah, but sadly, quite fallible players that are going there, etc., etc. So Connolly, the drift has been remarkable. Last September, Connolly was starting, and the key, the game plan was to get Aaron Connolly behind João Cancelo away to Portugal in a World Cup qualifier, and it worked pretty well. Yeah. Connolly wasn't amazing, but had somewhat of an impact, and a better referee and a working VAR would have awarded him a penalty, and then that's a very significant impact in a very, very significant game. But hasn't worked out for him at all at Brighton, despite seems to be given lots of chances there. Loads of chances. He can't. It's not as if he's somebody who hasn't like the McGrath situation, whereby the chance didn't want to be taken to plunge him into a matchday squad or into a starting 11 because of concerns about his fitness or concerns about his ability and where you are in the league. With Brighton, Graham Potter gave him every chance in the world. Even that move to Middlesbrough, it's a decent ranking, a good manager in the Championship, and you're kind of coming back on. Didn't really work. He played 19 or 20 times, scored twice, I think. Yeah. One of those goals is a pretty whopper deflection. He seems to be struggling fitness-wise. He seems to have this chronic heel problem for which he's had to take in painkilling injections. That's what Stephen Kenny has cited when he's been left out of international squads in March and in June. Was also left out in November. That's only a couple of months after starting in Portugal. So this is a drift. There are plenty of whisperings about his attitude. Maybe that isn't as good as it could be or should be, and is maybe what's holding him back in comparison to the other players of his generation that are now quite well established in the Ireland team, and have been established for a number of windows. So
you say like maybe a change of environment or somewhere different might work for him, but like these are the things that we were talking about going to Middlesbrough. It didn't really work, and he's under a really good manager in Chris Wilder, who was eager to get Connolly in, but did admit with a slightly rueful air that that didn't quite work out. And I remember watching his press conference when Connolly was introduced to the media after signing for Middlesbrough. He was being asked about the question was, citing all these articles that were written primarily in Ireland, in fairness, about Aaron Connolly's at a crossroads at his career at the age of 21 or 22, and the local Middlesbrough media were kind of startled by that. I mean, they were talking to Connolly about, Aaron, everyone's talking about this being a crossroads at your career, you're so young, is that actually true? And Connolly said, no, didn't agree with it, but if that wasn't a crossroads, this is it. So he's been left out of the pre-season squad for Brighton. It seems like he's going to move. The local Brighton media have linked him with a move to Venezia in Serie B. Following his Instagram as they do, he's in Venice. So so it seems like maybe that is a runner. It's a very interesting move. As to whether it'll work out, I have no idea. I hope it does. Ireland, I mean, for Connolly's sake, I hope it does. Ireland have some attacking talent in the sense that they will move on without him, but he still has enough talent, and he still has age on his side to become a major contributor at international level for Ireland. But, well, I say I have no idea what to expect. I mean, it would take a turnaround in fortunes and turnaround in everything that's been happening certainly in the last 12 months for that to work out, basically. Yeah,
it's such a left field move. It's really hard to, in the opposite sense of Collins to Wolves, you can kind of just see that absolutely makes sense. Connolly going to Italy, going to Serie B, you're just like, I don't know. Yeah, genuinely, and it's nobody can say.
But we've also criticised Irish players, or maybe lamented generally the fact that Irish players aren't brave enough to move beyond the UK and move to a new culture and try things. So this Connolly's doing. Fair play to him, and it'd be brilliant if it worked out for all parties. Yeah. But he's going there with a lot to prove.
Yeah. One person that things have been relatively quiet around, at least as far as I can make out, and I'm really surprised by this, given that they did so well to hang on to him last summer, given the trouble they were in. I'm talking about Jason Knight at Derby. Clearly, obviously, they've gone down to League One. They've got new ownership, but you can't really say that things are necessarily all that more stable there. They've brought in David McGoldrick, they brought in Conor Harahan, so it seems like they're laying the groundwork for potentially Knight to go. You would have figured that he's one of the more in-demand players there, but as I say, things seem relatively quiet.
Curiously quiet, yeah. There was a story linking with him with Werder Bremen, I think, which is another interesting move, and then more prosaically with Birmingham City. Again, maybe this is my Irish bias. I always thought that Knight would be a decent signing at lower tier Premier League level.
Sure, yeah.
I always thought that he'd be a good signing for Everton, because obviously he worked with Lampard at Derby. I had heard that Lampard had initially mentioned Knight around Chelsea circles when he first took over, but there was no interest there. Knight actually did kind of lose his place. He was in and out of the Derby team in the latter half of in the closing weeks of last season, curiously enough, under Wayne Rooney. But we've seen what he can do for Ireland. He's 20, 21. Yeah. He's played more than 100 senior games for Derby, and that's real men's football in the sense that complete
there was a lot asked of him last season. Last 18 months there was a lot asked of him,
and he's played everywhere. He's played left back, right back, up front, central midfield, to the right of the attack, to the left of the attack. I mean, he's played almost everywhere except for in goal.
Has that hurt him then? Because that whole jack of all trades, master of none perception, if not necessarily reality, because I think
seems a bit young for his career, and I doubt it, to be honest, because he's also proven himself he can play in midfield at international level. So I think that maybe counterbalances that. But it is curiously quiet on that front. I haven't heard anything as to if anything is in the offing. He was biting his tongue on his club future when we were chatting to him at during the international window in June. The etc. is just like, I'm not thinking about that. It was the kind of classic media train answer. So it's one to watch. I mean, Derby, according to reporting the Sun yesterday or the day before about that Werder Bremen link, that Derby are not going to let him go for a knockdown fee. He's in his final year of his contract. The financial situation can't be great, although they are recruiting. McGoldrick and Harahan, they're championship level players. They're we're here to get promoted straight back to the championship.
For wages more than fees,
signings. Though. Yeah, completely. Yeah, but I mean they're of a standard. That's a club with ambitions to get straight back up. You didn't know how harsh would the landing be for Derby in League One? Maybe not as harsh as we thought it might be. So yeah, one to watch. I'd still be surprised if Knight is there when the season starts.
I'll keep an eye on his Instagram. You've taught me something certainly about Irish footballers this afternoon. Gavin Cooney from the 42.ie. Thanks so much for coming in.
Cheers, Richie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.